All right. Trista Zinn, what an honor to have you in our Super Healers interview. You and me have known each other for a while. We worked together at Moonrise. Um, but you have a checkered history, you have a checkered past, which I'm going to let you tell in full glory and detail because it's very inspiring. But the short version is that you're a master hypopressives trainer. You're one of the board members of the International Hypopressives Council. You're a founding member. You've been working with health and well-being and wellness for more than 2 decades, so probably even three. You're an athlete yourself. You've gone through a lot of health issues yourself, and you've practiced what you preached. So I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited that you're part of our ecosystem and community. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I was glad to be. Yeah. I was happy you asked me.
Of course, my pleasure. So, Trista, for those that are uninitiated, tell us a little bit more about your story. Obviously, that led up to the symptoms of prolapse, and yeah, take us from there.
Sure. So it was back in 2012. I've been in the fitness industry for, yeah, over 30 years and was a personal trainer. And as you mentioned, I do like to do a lot athletically. So I'm a cyclist, runner, cross country skier, do strength training. My passion is being outside, being active. And so in 2012, I was diagnosed with pelvic organ prolapse. It was a stage 2. And I wasn't a new mom. So my eldest was 12 and my son was, I think, 6 at the time, somewhere around there. Um, and for me, it was a really devastating piece of information finding this out. It's not a part of the body that I'm used to talking about or wasn't used to talking about back then. Certainly not, symptoms or this diagnosis for sure. But also back then in 2012, not so much anymore. At that diagnosis, I was also told to stop doing all my workouts. So stop running, stop doing my strength training, my ab workouts, everything, because it could make it worse. So truly, for someone who loves to do all of those things, even if I'd just been told not to do that, I would have had a hard time emotionally coping with that piece of information, let alone the fact that all those things I would have used to help me emotionally cope with this diagnosis, I was also told not to do. And it was shortly after that diagnosis, probably within a couple of weeks. I wasn't writing a journal. I didn't think I was going to be sharing my story to the world back then. Um, a friend of mine, Kim Vopni, who's also in the pelvic health industry and was just kind of starting out around then, had heard about this hypopressive technique online on YouTube. And so I'd called her and told her about my diagnosis, and she had suggested I check out this hypopressives. And so I looked it up online. I was like, what the heck is this? And I did what I, recommend people not necessarily do, but I started to emulate what I saw on YouTube. And within about 2 to 3 weeks, I went back to the pelvic health physio and my stage 2 and moved up to a stage 1. And the pelvic health physio was blown away. She's like, oh my God, I'm on my knees. I don't see anything. Like, it looks really good. My pelvic floor function was starting to normalize. And things were changing. I was feeling things change. And I know this sounds a little weird. And I mentioned it before in an interview and they put it in a magazine, which was a little weirder. But I do remember walking down the street and be like, kind of feels like I have a vagina of like a 16-year-old or something again. Like everything just kind of felt lifted and supported. And I didn't have like a lot of symptoms going into that pelvic health physio's appointment. I'd heard about the pelvic PT in a course that I was in, heard about how important it was. And although I'd had some symptoms that I hadn't attributed to pelvic organ prolapse because I didn't even know what it was back then, I found out that those symptoms were related to the pelvic organ prolapse. And after my pelvic organ prolapse started to resolve, I no longer had those symptoms. And trying to like put this into a quick little nutshell, after that diagnosis and finding out my stage 2 went up to a stage 1, like, oh my God, how can I get trained in this? As a personal trainer, can I take the course? It wasn't being offered in English. So just to, to help this part make sense, when I say I was trying to emulate what I saw on YouTube, just to bear in mind, there wasn't anything in English back then. It was all Spanish speaking. And I
Yeah.
do not speak Spanish. So I
No.
was just doing what I thought they were doing online. I didn't really know. And so I wanted to bring it into the English speaking community. And I sought out Kaisa in Banyoles, Spain. She was the only English speaking instructor at the time who was teaching the courses. She taught me privately the level 1. As a personal trainer, I could take the course. So I went to go and see her, came back, practiced diligently, learned the importance to the details of the poses. Within roughly 4 weeks, I went back to the pelvic health physio and I no longer had a prolapse. And it
Wow.
just kind of started a whirlwind of travel back and forth to get myself to the point where I could be a course instructor and teach the workshops, because how am I going to help as many people as I can? I need to teach the professionals and share it with them so they
Right.
can use it as a
Right.
tool with their clients.
Beautiful, beautiful story, Trista. Thank you for sharing. I never get tired listening to your story because it's so inspiring. And it sort of is a testament to the fact that, you could, with the right set of exercises and the right set of belief, you could indeed get your function and form back. But I want to talk about a couple of things. I want us to talk a little bit about how you felt and when your coping mechanisms were taken away from you, like when people, now all good, well intentioned, I'm sure, but just the wrong advice. But when people tell people that have symptoms of such nature that they shouldn't be
Mhm.
doing activities they'd enjoy, they shouldn't be running, they shouldn't be cycling, they shouldn't be meeting friends and doing things together, right? So, what happened to you when you were asked not to do that? And looking back on it, what would you recommend people to women that are sitting in the same position to do that
Well,
irrespective?
you know what? I rode the stationary bike in the basement because I'm like, you know what? I need to maintain my sanity. And for me to ride a stationary bike in the basement is not going to do anything for my prolapse, is what I was thinking. And it was my own body. So I was willing to conduct those experiments a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And see if it was making symptoms worse or not. And it wasn't. And so riding the stationary bike in the basement is nothing compared to the other activities that I like to do, but it helped me maintain my sanity. And I could listen to music and I ride it hard, get a good sweat on, and feel like I've done something. Um, so I definitely did that. I found out about the hypopressive shortly after my diagnosis, and there is a very mindfulness component to it, and it does offer breathing. It kind of grounds you. It's full body. For me, it was like, oh my God, this is like the slowest, hardest thing workout I'd ever done. It would have been easier for me to run hills and stairs, quite frankly, than to pay attention to my breath and the pose and be there. So it was stimulating for me. It wasn't like a Kegel where it's like relax and relax and contract, which is so mentally boring. And so this was like something that was stimulating and really helped to ground me. I started to when I'd stopped doing my activities, I wasn't feeling comfortable in my own skin. Like I was used to feeling a toned abdominal, like waistline. I was used to working out and feeling that sensation, a different body than what I was starting to feel after not doing any of the strength training for a couple of weeks. And the hypopressives, although they don't strengthen, what I was doing at the time wasn't doing a lot of strengthening the arms, etc. It was improving the tone of my waistline. And I was like, oh my God, this feels like different. It felt like a different supported, just
Yeah.
naturally kind of flat supported, instead of thinking I needed to make it look like it was supported. Does that make sense? Like, and actively
Yeah.
trying to do it.
Yeah.
And my pelvic floor, like I mentioned, like started to feel like there was more support. And not there was a huge symptoms before, but there was definitely a difference after I started that I noticed that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Interesting. But Trista,
yeah,
just back to like the question, right? So would you recommend women that have been given the diagnosis and recommended not to do activities? What would you tell them?
I think they should do activities. I think it's important. I think it's important for our bodies to be strong, because if they're not, the pelvic floor is going to take the brunt of it. Right. So I think it's important to see what activities work for you. If there's something that's creating symptoms, and be like, okay, maybe I need to modify it. Maybe running's not my thing, but maybe cycling is, or maybe I can speed walk or do, for sure. We need it for the mind. I think the pelvic floor, we need it also. We get circulation down there, we get movement down there. And I think everybody's different and responds to things different. And strength training, there's so much modifications you can do for strength training.
For sure, for
Like,
sure. Yeah. But good points. But I mean, one of the things we speak about in the book, and we speak about obviously in the work we do together, is for women to learn to listen to themselves and be empowered in the decision that they want to make. How did you go about doing that? How did you decide to do a stationary bike? How did you decide to do hypopressives? How did you like what was the driving force, and what helped you listen inwards so you could really understand what
okay.
you needed?
Okay, well, I went through a stage where I was not happy. I remember lying in bed with my son and being like, I had to flip the switch. I was like, I have to flip this mental switch. And I had to be like, okay, wait a minute. This is not terminal. It's not my kids. I had to start changing the language and the talk that I was giving to myself on a regular basis, which was negative about the things I couldn't do, and start looking at spinning the positives. Wait a minute. I can still do this. I can still go outside. I can still go for long walks. It's not going to kill me. It's not my kids. And there was a point where I'm like, you know what? I've been going to do something about this. This is not going to dictate what I can and can't do for the rest of my life. And I just started experimenting and exploring what worked for me with regards to weights. And I had to change my mindset, because otherwise I would probably still be where I was. And I had talked to a client about it. And 100%, I remember her saying, I was saying, like, I don't know if I should wait for hypopressives to come to Canada or whatever. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, just go there. And I'm like, yeah, what the hell? I'm going to go there. And I remember
Yeah.
walking home from that session and calling my husband and be like, I think I'm going to go to Spain to do this
Mm,
course. And he was like, yeah, 100%. And he was very supportive. And the first
yeah.
trip, we were in France already. So he came with me. We did a side trip. And then the trips after that, I went on my own, and they were really empowering. I have to say, the first trip that I went on
Mm,
my own, I hadn't really left my whole family, all the ones that I loved, and kind of just took off, to another
mm,
country before. And at the
mm.
beginning, I was a little bit upset, like a little sad but happy at the airport. But when I came back, it was like, holy shit, like I just did that. Like I just
Yeah.
I know that airport, and no one else in my family knows that airport, and no one else knows that city that I know now. And it just kind of kept happening every time I went back there. It was so empowering, and it was, yeah,
Beautiful.
I just loved it. Yeah.
I mean, the key message there is that you followed what felt right for you. I mean, for some,
Mhm.
hyperpresses doesn't work, right? I mean, we have to be honest. It's not a silver bullet. It's not, and some
Mhm.
do it really wrong, and they're taught wrong, or they mimic on YouTube, and they do it wrong. So there's obviously it's not the message is not about hyperpresses, right? The message is about you having the courage to show up for yourself, taking decisions that was outside your comfort zone,
Yeah.
which involve leaving your family and going to a new country and going to somebody that has never spoken your language to learn. So there's a lot of those unknowns that you did, which is the same as a
Mhm.
healing journey. Isn't that right? Like when you realize that you need to go out of your comfort zone but still be rooted in how you need understanding how what's important for you.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it is a journey, and there's some right and there's some wrongs, and I think you have to open up. I was willing to open up and explore, and this really just made sense to me. And I was really willing to surrender myself to this technique, and I started to feel some benefits with it. And I just went with it. And I remember thinking at one point, like, oh my God, is this what I get to do for the rest of my life? Like, this I
Yeah.
can do, and you have to change the mindset. It's like, I get to do hypopresses. I don't have to do them, kind of.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? And you have to
mm,
change your perspective. And the other thing too, which I tell clients, is it's not just a pelvic floor exercise program. So you don't have to be like, oh my
oh.
God, I have to go do my quote unquote pelvic floor exercises. No, you
Mm,
get to do hypopressives, and it is a core and respiratory training system that's used by men, women around the globe who are seeking out like a way to truly train their core
mm.
function and reap all the rewards that it has. So
Yeah.
there's different ways to think about it. right?
Exciting. Yeah, 100%. Trista, I want us to come back to age and being closer to menopause and this hitting you this was like a jolt out of a clear blue sky for you, right? Because your youngest was 6 years old. It was not like you were postpartum prolapsed,
Yeah.
So let's walk us through how you felt the moment you realized it, and walk us through what women that are listening that are in their that feel they're too old to reverse the symptoms. They feel it's gone too long. They got the symptoms maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years back, and they've learned to sort of normalize and live with it. So can you just walk us through how you look upon age and time, and how you felt when you realized what you realized with the symptoms you had much later than after giving birth?
Well, I think for sure there was shock, because how was it that I was a 42-year-old woman at the time and I never even heard of this? It would have been something that I think, had I been diagnosed with when my kids were younger and a new mom, to me, I think it would have made more sense, or I would have been able to wrap my head around it a little bit more. But I just thought I was so past any of those symptoms that would have occurred, with being a new mom. So there was definitely shock there, as how was it that I was so old? No one had told me about it, etc. It is a maintenance program that I use for sure. As I'm aging, I'm kind of riding this perimenopause wave, I guess. And so I see it as a tool that I'm using to help me manage symptoms related to menopause, but not related. I don't have symptoms with pelvic floor anymore because I do the hypopressives. And for me, it's like, it's what works and it helps to maintain the results that I achieved. But there are other aspects of the hypopressives that also help with the perimenopause. I'm I have definitely, like, I had much detail you want to get into. The perimenopause symptoms that I've had started with insane hot flashes, like insanity, hot flashes and night sweats. They didn't kind of like gradually come. It was like bang. I was getting them a couple of times a day. Couldn't sleep. It was intense. And once again, I'm like, I'm not living with this. Like, I can't, this is like, I can't even teach my classes and pay attention. The sweat's like dripping down. And I'd be in the grocery store looking for like the cold section so I could like cool off. And it was really intense. And so even for that, I mean, I sought out a doctor, and I've started hormone replacement therapy, HRT. For me, it's brilliant. It works really well. It's like helped my symptoms. It's definitely a trial and error because it's not always you find exactly the right dose. But again, you know what? I don't know. I like to do what I like to do, and I want to stay comfortable in my own skin. And I'm very energetic, et cetera. And I don't, I guess, I
That's
don't
the
like these things
message.
to take over my
No,
life. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm not,
Mm. No,
yeah,
but
it's not
actually, I have
changing
a,
who I am.
yeah, I mean, we speak about this in the book that symptoms are your body's way of asking for help. They're not a nuisance, so to speak. It's like
Mhm,
having crying babies, and we have a whole chapter dedicated to what symptoms mean and what the new science tells us, and what
mhm.
homeostasis is when it comes to the science of healing, where your body's trying to strive to equilibrium and symptoms are getting in its way. Um, and again, I mean, the message here is that it's not about whether HRT works. It's about what is right for you, and you felt that was right for you,
100%.
right? And because
100%.
otherwise we get into topics where it's clearly there's some things that are clearly right or wrong, but in this case it's more subjective. And I think in the world where we have more options, it's a better world, and in a world where we're taught how to pick the best option for us, that's an even better world, right?
Yeah. And I think educate yourself. The more we know, the more we learn, the more we can make educated choices, or choices that we're happy with in the end. So it wasn't a quick like, oh, HRT, I'm going to try that and do it. No, I like read about it. I looked into it. I talked to others and listened to others that were also using it. So for me, knowledge is gold, right? If you have the knowledge, then you're like, okay, then you can make decisions and you can be happy with the decisions that you've made. And I think
Mm.
that everything, it involves a little trial and error, and we're so unique as humans that what works for
Yeah,
one might not work
100%.
for someone else, and that's okay, right? But to
100,
listen and for me to
100%.
share this with you and with the audience, maybe it resonates with someone, maybe it doesn't. That's okay. It
No,
might be like,
no.
just give someone just that piece of information that plants the seed that's like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that, let me check
Yeah,
that
yeah.
out, and they get learn to explore a little more,
Mm,
and that's what's great about podcasts, social media. We can look,
yeah.
listen, learn from each
But
other, and
it's almost like I want to give everybody, I want you, if you can help people, with a cheat sheet or something, because there's so much information today, and we're adding to the noise, right? Our conversation is obviously valuable for women that are really interested in the topic, but it also adds to the feeling of overwhelm. It adds to the feeling of abundance. I don't know if you agree with me, Trista. It's like there's so much information today. So in this world of information, what are some principles that you look back upon, that comes to sort of good health and healing for your pelvic floor and in general, I guess? What are some principles of, that you've learned and you would recommend people to think about?
um, I think you need to talk. I'm a talker. I'm a big talker. I'm a big listener. So I really like to talk and listen. And I teach a walking clinic also. I don't know if you knew that, but these women I've been with for probably 30 years, some of them have been with my walking clinic. We do a lot of walking, we do a lot of talking. And so I think if we
Oh,
do a lot of
beautiful.
walking and a
I
lot of
didn't know
talking,
that.
yeah. So
Beautiful. So talking in the sense of like, speaking with people that have walked your shoes, is that what you mean? Or is it like
yeah,
sharing?
yeah, yeah. It's talking, sharing, listening. So then that way we have questions that we can ask. If we're seeing a professional, we have questions that we can ask, and we can go in feeling like we have knowledge. We're not just basing it on. I like to speak with, not to just go by what I see on social media, but I like the human interaction, the contact, and to actually chat with someone about their experience, not just kind of blindly go by what someone says. And
Beautiful.
I
So
like
talking,
that.
walking, and surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah, yeah. And then I can go in and I can ask questions, and I feel like I have knowledge. And if anything, it's an adventure. You're going to learn. And it's like someone
Mm,
who's not sure about a pessary. Should they get a pessary? Should they not get a pessary? Should they go, like, let's go? I'm like, book the appointment, go, check it out. You're only going to learn from that appointment. You can
yeah.
decide. You can decide if you want it or not. You can try it, and you'll be like, okay, you know what? I tried it. It's not for me. Or they're like, oh my
Yeah, you
God,
have
I'm
the
so glad I tried this. It is for me.
exactly,
Like,
exactly. You have the
so
power to say yes or no, and you can
100%.
make much more informed choices if you speak to others.
Yeah. Yep. And don't
Trista,
be don't
yeah,
be too scared to give things a try. Like hypopressives back then, it was like, oh, what the hell is this? No one's seen it before. No one tried it before. Like in English speaking countries, it was predominantly in Spanish speaking. To me, it just made sense. I was going to experiment. I'm going to conduct a little bit of a personal experiment and check it out and see if it felt right. And it did feel
mm,
right for me, and it was working.
mm,
So
beautiful.
if I was like, oh my God, I'm not trying that. There's not enough research. I don't have it anything in English, and just shut the door to that because, you know, then I would have never gotten to where I am today. So I think you need
No,
to open your mind. Um, yeah, and hard up
I
to
think,
different things.
yeah, I'm very conscious of your time, but I just want to end off by saying I think the quote that comes to mind when you talk about this for me is that when your curiosity is greater than your courage, beautiful things start to happen. And I think healing is no different, that when you're curious about your body and you're curious about solutions out there, and you have courage to try, and walk the path,
Hmm. Hmm.
things happen. So Trista, thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for giving back so much. Thank you for your time. Late in the night, I know it's not your
Yes.
prime time, but really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.